Welcome to the Big Picture Retirement Show, where you'll learn what it really takes to have a successful retirement. With over 20 years of experience, your host, Rick Rivera of Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, has seen it all and is here to help you achieve your retirement dreams. This is the Big Picture Retirement Show.
Welcome into the Big Picture Retirement Show with Rick Rivera. I'm Mark Elliott. Glad you're with us. Rick is a partner at Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, has over 20 years experience in the financial industry. And Rick and the team at Safeguard are really here to help you figure out where you are on that road to retirement. Can I retire? Do we have enough? Are we going to be okay if we retire? How do we put all that together? Rick and the team are here to work with you on that, kind of like your own chief financial officer, if you will, of your retirement. 800-700-1980. No cost to you to chat with Rick and the team. 800-700-1980. You can always go to the website to learn more. Safeguardinvestment.com. Safeguardinvestment.com. Rick, ready to go?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right, we're going to talk about some of the challenges of 2025. Now, we obviously don't know all the challenges. There's a lot going on. We have a different president than we did the last 4 years. That one we never heard from, and this one we hear from all the time. So it's much different. There is no question. There's some great things. There's probably some things maybe you don't like going on, but there's just a lot going on. But we're going to talk about retirees, things that will affect us. And that would be inflation, market volatility, and Social Security. And there's some new things. President Biden signed in towards the end of his term, the Social Security Fairness Act. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. And that affects a lot of folks in California. So we're going to touch on those three main topics: inflation, market volatility, and Social Security. So let's start with inflation. We certainly remember just a few years back, 2022, when all we heard was this is the highest inflation we've had in 40 years, going back to the 80s. And I think it got to 9%. Now we're kind of 3 to 4, somewhere in that area. I think inflation is not as big a deal, but is inflation always a factor when it comes to retirement?
Yeah, inflation is always a factor. And here's the thing. When you say that, it's sitting around 3 and 4, keep in mind, prices are still very high. It's just not, increasing at as a fast rate as it was, the previous years. And the other thing that we got to take into consideration when we do talk about inflation, and we talk about inflation regarding retirement, here's a key thing. And I talk about this in the workshop. You're going to get, general different indexes that talk about, what the inflation rate is, whether it's the government, reporting inflation being one number. Maybe you have some sort of other index, whether it's, Wall Street Journal reports inflation being this or that or the other, consumer price index. There's all these different indexes or ways that inflation is measured. Really, how we have to do it for retirees is we have to figure it out based upon your specific situation. Because if an advisor is basically planning your retirement based on some random index, again, whether it's whatever the government's reporting or some other index, they're lumping you in with everybody else. And the point that I want to make is that inflation affects people differently. So quick example, if I drive 5 miles to go to work each day and my partner Reed has to drive 40, obviously inflation is going to affect him differently than it is me. Or let's say, for example, Mark, let's say I have a client that I sit down with and they tell me, hey, Rick, you know what? When I retire, my goal is to travel. Well, I know travel costs are probably rising at about 6%. Somebody else might tell me, Rick, you know what? I'm concerned about medical costs. That's rising at 7%. So what we need to do is we need to sit down with the client, figure out what's most important to them moving forward. Maybe somebody tells me, Rick, you know what? I did a lot of traveling earlier on in my career. And honestly, when I retire, I don't plan on doing a lot of traveling. Really, what I want to do is maybe play a little golf and spend more time with the grandkids. Maybe 3 or 4% is okay in their situation. So a good advisor will actually sit down with you, ask you the appropriate questions, figure out what's most important to you moving forward, and then design an inflation rate around your situation. Because what good is it if they're pegging your inflation to some basket of goods that has nothing to do with you? So quick example, once again, right now we know egg costs are extremely high. Well, for somebody that doesn't eat eggs, it's not a concern whatsoever. So it's a very individualistic thing. And this is what we do is we fine tune it for you. So that way, going into retirement, whatever your income is, hey, there's a plan to increase your income to adjust for inflation over time based upon your specific goals, based upon your specific parameters and what's most important to you going forward.
Because I think the 100-year average of inflation is right around 3% is what they say. But My grandparents retired in the 70s, and that was super high, and that was double-digit inflation back then. But my guess is once prices go up, as you mentioned, Rick, they typically don't ever go back down. It seems like they go up and they might stay there for a little bit. But inflation is certainly part of the retirement planning process, the big picture blueprint that Rick and the team will walk you through at Safeguard Investment Advisory Group. If you'd like to sit down with Rick and talk about that, maybe inflation is something that's on your mind because it doesn't matter. If you retired this year, you can pretty much guarantee by 2040 that the things you're buying today are going to cost you more. I mean, that's just how inflation works. 800-700-1980, 800-700-1980 to chat with Rick and the team. Maybe you want to walk through that big picture blueprint: income, investment, taxes, healthcare, legacy planning, Social Security, Medicare, all that's on your shoulders in retirement. Great opportunity to have kind of like your chief financial officer being Rick Rivera and the team at Safeguard kind of walking side by side with you so you make the decisions that are best for you. 800-700-1980. Another challenge will always be market volatility. Sometimes the markets are great, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're flat, sometimes they're not. And we know from going from a Biden administration to a Trump administration, probably different sectors in the market are good. This group called FactSet, their analysts expect the S&P 500 earnings to be around 15% for 2025. Maybe they're right, maybe they're not. But how do you see market volatility this year?
Well, you know what? I'm looking at things not from a day trader's perspective. What I'm looking at is when we're planning a retirement for somebody, what we're doing is we know there's going to be market volatility. And just like you said, Mark, there's going to be some experts that are going to say, oh, yeah, you know what, the market's going to continue to run and do very well this year. And then you're going to have another group of experts that say, oh, no, well, here's the reason why the market's not going to do good. And we have consistently had volatility for decades and decades and years. And our economy has seen war and famine and different administrations and oil embargoes, and you name it, we've seen it. Different political environments, different economic environments. So what we do is this: we have to stick with the fundamentals, and we know what works over the long haul. Sticking with the fundamentals, sticking with true retirement planning from the standpoint that if somebody's going into retirement, the best way I can explain this is that we have to plan for the worst case scenario. We need to make sure that, hey, when the markets go down, how are you positioned where your income is still guaranteed and you don't have to worry about selling positions at losses in order to create your income? So, and then when the markets are going up, how are you positioned to where you can capitalize on that as well and make sure that your income keeps up with inflation? So it's really creating a balance. So that way, when we do have volatility, you're not getting a call from your broker that just says to you, oh, you know what? Hang in there. We know it's going to come back. Oh, yeah, sure. We know it's going to come back, but when? In the meantime, what are we doing in order to leverage the down markets in your favor? And that is the key thing, because the way we structure retirement is not only to make sure the income is guaranteed, but we also have to make sure that the investments are keeping up with inflation. But we put our clients in a situation that when there is volatility and the markets are down, now our clients are set up to where they're like, listen, I'm fine, I'm okay. Actually, we're looking at down markets as opportunities to leverage in their favor, whether it be Roth conversions, whether it's picking up more shares at cheaper prices, having the interest and dividends reinvested, scooping up more shares at cheaper prices. And we don't have all our eggs in one basket. So it allows us to take advantage of opportunities when markets go down. And then when they recuperate and they start climbing back up again, we're in a better position. We actually recuperate much faster moving forward. And then if we have to readjust the income or their situation down the road to increase inflation, we know where to pull money from in order to achieve these different things. So we actually leverage volatility in their favor.
I would imagine you might have a client or two that are 100% in the market, that are retired. They just love the market. They got pensions and Social Security. That it's kind of play money. Then you have some that are like, I don't want any money at risk. I'm good. I've got enough. I just want to make sure it's safe and protected. Most of the folks I would imagine you work with at Safeguard Investment Advisory Group probably have some growth money and some safe and protected money, and the percentages would all vary depending upon their situation, I would imagine.
And that is absolutely correct. Everybody's situation is different. And just to kind of give you that example, There's a difference in somebody saying, "Hey, I'm aggressive and I'm willing to accept, being super aggressive in the market," versus can they be that aggressive? So if I have somebody where, let's say, a quick example, pensions and Social Security are 10,000 a month, and the bills are 4,000, and the money that they have saved up, they don't really need to live on, and they want to be super aggressive with it. Okay, fine. They don't need it to live on. Somebody else, income's 10,000, bills are 12,000. We may say, hey, listen, yeah, I know you want to be aggressive, but you know what? You can't afford to be too aggressive. We need to make sure this money lasts the rest of your life, and we need to have a strategic plan going forward. Because the last thing that we want is if the market's down 10%, and let's say you need 5% to live on, now you're down 15, and you're intensifying the losses. So we have to have a plan. And then on the other side of the token, let's say you have somebody that's super conservative, and they're maybe a depression baby, and they're like, listen, I like having the money in the coffee can in the backyard. We have to say, hey, listen, you know what? And reality is this. We need to make sure this money at least keeps up with inflation. We don't have to take a bunch of risk. We can still be conservative, but, at the same time, we can't just have it, sitting under the mattress as well. So it's really having that conversation and realistic expectations with the clients moving forward.
So we probably don't want to go to Vegas and let it all ride on black or red. We probably don't want to put it in the coffee can in the backyard. Those are two extremes, right? But everybody's situation is unique, and that's how Rick and the team look at it when they're creating your big picture retirement blueprint. It's all about you. How can they help? Can they help? They don't know. Are you going to be okay if you retire? That's really a big question. Are we going to be okay if we retire? Will our money last? 800-700-1980 is the number to chat with Rick and the team at Safeguard Investment Advisor Group. Again, there's no cost for this. There's no obligation. There's no pressure. But it's about you. How can Rick and the team help? 800-700-1980 if you'd like to learn more about where you are on that road to retirement. 800-700-1980. We're going to come back. We're going to talk another challenge. And there's some kind of good things for some people in the Social Security world. And there's always question marks about Social Security as well. So we're going to touch on that topic when we come back with Rick Rivera right here on the Big Picture Retirement Show. Stay with us. We're back in 1 minute.
You're listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show with Rick Rivera. For more information about Rick and the Safeguard Investment Advisory Group team, go to safeguardinvestment.com. While you're there, you can also download educational retirement guides and sign up for an upcoming seminar. That's safeguardinvestment.com. Now, back to the podcast.
Welcome back to the Big Picture Retirement Show with Rick Rivera of Safeguard Investment Advisor Group. Rick is a partner along with Eddie Soto, Reed Aberdeen. The team at Safeguard is here to help you figure out where you are on that road to retirement. You can always go to the website to learn more, safeguardinvestment.com. Find out about upcoming events as well. Rick talks about those from time to time. Of course, you can always call 800-700-1980 if you just want to set up a time and go, I think we're going to be okay, but I don't really know. We're going to retire in 2 years. What do you think? Are we on track? Be a great time to find out. 800-700-1980. I'm Mark Elliott. Glad you're with us. We're talking about some of the challenges of the year. So we've talked in the last segment about inflation and market volatility. The final thing we're going to talk about is Social Security, Rick. When you think about Social Security, the cost of living adjustment for Social Security recipients this year was 2.5%. If you look from 2010 to 2021, I think the highest, 2012 was 3.6 cost of living. 2019 was 2.8. Everything else was zero to those numbers. It was really low. Then we get to 2022, high inflation. So 2022, 5.9% cost of living. 2023, 8.7. Last year was 3.2, and this year 2.5, which means inflation's down a little bit. So how much do you factor in cost of living adjustments with Social Security when you're trying to help people make that decision on when and how to start it?
Well, if I'm understanding your question correctly, it goes back to what we were talking about before. Obviously Social Security, they'll get incremental raises based upon inflation, but based upon what? What basket of goods is the government using in order to determine that?
They're not using retirement topics, it seems to me. Healthcare, things like that retirees need.
Somebody on the East Coast in the wintertime may use a lot more fuel and energy to heat their home than maybe somebody on the West Coast. You and I were just talking about it today. It's 73 degrees over here in California, and it's 10 degrees over there where you're sitting at?
It's not very nice.
So the fact that they give everybody a 2% a raise across the board, doesn't help them. So what we have to do is we look at a client's situation, determine what their income, what their expenses are, what they're spending most of their money on, and then design an inflation rate around them and their specific situation. That way, we're not relying on the government, because that's the problem. Is that hey, if the government wants to give us a gimme, fine, we'll take it, but we have to plan, assuming they're not going to give us anything, and that's what we have to do. We plan for you. We plan for your specific situation and design everything around your scenario, not some random
Right.
basket of goods that the government, is going to
Right.
decide what it is.
And I would think Social Security. I'm 65. I have not started Social Security yet because I'm still working. I was born in 1959, so according to Social Security, my full retirement age is 66 and 10 months. For those born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age, according to Social Security, is 67. And so if you had started at 62, at 67 as your full retirement age, it's like a 30%. You're taking 30% less. But sometimes that makes sense. So that's one of the interesting things about Social Security, I think, Rick, is people have a tendency to look at it in a vacuum. If I wait till 70, I get more. If I start at 62, I get less. If I wait till my full retirement age, well, then I can make as much as I want and I don't get taxed more. So it's kind of well, not necessarily taxed. It's that if you take it before your full retirement age, it's like for every $2 you give $1 back. The year of that time, it's $3, you give $1 back. So there's so many moving targets. I think Social Security is one of those areas, though, that people look at it in a vacuum, where you're looking at it with everything else, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I had somebody come in the other day and she sat down with an advisor or somebody, and they told her, hey, you know what? You should take Social Security when you're 70. That way you get the maximum benefit out of it. So I asked her, I go, well, what was that based upon? And she's like, well, that's what they just told me to do. And I said, well, did they look at your taxes? Did they look at your income? Did they look at your investments? Did they look at it? And she says, no, so there's a lot of general information out there. And the scenario is this: when you collect Social Security, there's a variety of factors that will determine that. And what's the sweet spot for you? And it's the same thing when it comes to pensions. I can't tell you how many people I sit down with, and they'll tell me, hey, some of my colleagues are telling me I should take that lump sum. And others are telling me, no, you should take the monthly. That's better for you. And, there's so much conflicting information out there that I think it's always good to sit down with somebody that specializes in this area, and they can actually show you in black and white. And this is what we do for our clients, Mark. We'll actually show you in black and white, not just tell you, we'll show you in black and white, hey, based upon your scenario, what you have going on, here is the sweet spot for you to take Social Security, and here's why. And we'll even run you a mock tax return if we have to, saying, hey, if you take Social Security now, here's how it's going to affect you. If you wait till later on, here's the pros and cons of that. Same thing with pensions and all the rest of it. This way you can make a decision based on education rather than just some general rule of thumb that you may see on the internet or somebody that gave you advice based on nothing, without even evaluating your situation. Because I've had scenarios where it made much more sense for somebody to actually take Social Security earlier than later, and from a tax standpoint, and also as a leverage standpoint, to get money over to, to do Roth conversions for them later on, to move their money over from 401ks and IRAs into a Roth, where now they'll be able to pull their money out tax-free later on. We use Social Security to leverage that, and they're not forced to take distributions at 73 or 75. So there's all these different variables that come into play. Because we specialize in this area, we can share ideas with you that we've seen our own clients go through. A lot of the stuff that we do in our practice, because we've learned based upon our clients' experiences over the past 2 decades. So this way you're not caught by surprise. So this is the whole thing, is just getting that education.
Yeah, because Rick and the team at Safeguard have this fancy-dancy software that can walk you through all the scenarios. You take it at 62, 65, 68, 63, whatever. They can show you all of the math behind all of that. So it's really important that you make the right decision, because if there's 2 of you, if you're married, husband and wife, and you're thinking, okay, we're going to be 20, 25 years in retirement, it's basically over $1 million decision over that time. 800-700-1980 to chat with Rick and the team at Safeguard. No cost to you, 800-700-1980. Final thing, still on Social Security, Joe Biden at the end of his term passed the Social Security Fairness Act, which had a couple things in it: windfall elimination provision and government pension offset. That does affect some Californians, doesn't it?
Oh, it certainly does. And you know what? That's one of the biggest complaints for many retirees that get pensions. Maybe they're working for the state or the government, and they would be part of what they call the windfall, where they would get dinged on their Social Security. Now they eliminated that, and a quick example I can give you is, let's say somebody worked a job and paid into Social Security for 10 or 15 years, and then they switched over, and let's say they're now working for the government, and they're not paying into Social Security anymore. Well, because they had that pension, and then they go to retire, the Social Security amount that they're entitled to, that, keep in mind, they worked for, they're entitled to, they would actually get penalized. Maybe they were entitled, I'm just making up numbers right now, but maybe they were entitled to $1,000 extra a month Social Security based on the hours that they put in. But because they're getting the pension, instead of getting 1,000, they're only getting 400. Where now they eliminated that. They said, hey, listen, you know what? If you're entitled to 1,000, you should be getting 1,000. You shouldn't be penalized. So this is going to be a big help for a lot of people. And I know that was a huge complaint with many retirees. So this is going to be something very positive.
Yeah, and it makes sense. The government pension offset was like, if let's say the husband had a job where he paid in Social Security, and the wife maybe was a school teacher and didn't pay in, and some do, some don't. But let's say you didn't get the spousal benefit. Well, the government pension offset puts that back into play as well.
Exactly. That's the other part of it as well, which is critical. Because imagine, you get, let's say you have a spouse that makes on her pension $5,000, and the husband gets $3,000 in Social Security. Well, if the husband passes away, now she loses $3,000 a month. Where now if she can claim that puts her in a much more powerful situation. So, bottom line, Mark, if people are like, listen, Rick, you know what? There's so much general information out there, and all this information can be very confusing. If they give us a call, we can let them know, hey, here's a sweet spot for you for Social Security. Here's a sweet spot for you for collecting your pensions. Here's what you can do to helpfully maybe mitigate taxes on your pensions and your Social Security and enhance investments and all that. So if you want that specific information for yourself, just give us a call toll free, 800-700-1980, and I'll give you an hour of my time. I promise you leave your checkbooks and all that behind, and within that hour, I'll try and give you 2 ideas that'll enhance whatever it is that you're doing and will cost you nothing. So you have nothing to lose to take advantage of that. And again, our toll-free number is 800-700-1980. And if you want to check us out on the website as well, we have a lot of seminars that are going on in the area that if you want to hop into one of our seminars, it costs nothing, and it'll be an opportunity to just kind of see what we're about. And that's website address is safeguardinvestment.com. Again, that is safeguardinvestment.com.
Firm offers insurance services. Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC is a registered investment advisory firm. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC.